All right.
Thank you.
Okay, new week. Our guys are excited, obviously, for the opportunity this Saturday. To have a chance to play a very talented team like Florida at their place in the Swamp. And that's an environment that many of our players had probably watched for many years growing up, and for them to get an opportunity to go compete on that stage is definitely one that all of them are looking forward to. I think for me as a coach, I'm looking forward to seeing how our guys handle the crowd noise. This will be our first road game of the year, and I'm expecting it to be loud like it always is there in a night game. And so for us to be able to operate on offense and with all the motions and snap counts and all these type of things is definitely going to be a challenge and one that we need to be prepared for. The thing about Florida stands out on tape is they're very physical, really, in all three phases of the game. They play very physical. They play hard. They're very strong at the line of scrimmage on both offense and defense. Their offensive line's done a really good job this year and running the ball, and their defensive line, in my opinion, is elite. I believe this will be the best D-line that we've played in the 2.5 years that I've been here. Just watching the video, they've got a bunch of guys, a lot of depth. They got a bunch of NFL guys, future NFL players over there on their defensive line. So that's something that really stands out. Coach Napier and his staff have done a good job, in my opinion, watching the first two games and just how hard their guys are playing, and not a lot of busted assignments. Guys are understand their job and are where they're supposed to be on defense. And at the end of the day, it's game 3 early in the year, and this really is a good measuring stick to kind of find out where we are as a team, how we match up to a top team, super talented, and our message to our players is the same as it was last week. Right, we got to focus on how we play. We can't worry about the opponent, can't worry about where we're playing, can't worry about all those things. We got to worry about improving. And I did see it definitely wasn't perfect last week. Still got plenty of things to correct, but I saw a step forward from week 1 to week 2, and we're going to have to take a big step forward from week 2 to week 3. Going into this type of environment versus this type of team. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
How do you simulate the environment? What do you do in practice to prepare yourself?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, you've got to change up how you do your snap count. Obviously, you can't go on a verbal cadence, but also we'll go with a lot of crowd noise. We introduced that today, and we've got some pretty big, loud speakers out there, so our guys will hear plenty of that this week in practice. And then a lot of it's it's got to be eye contact with each other, and sometimes some hand signals, and just a little bit different than when you're playing at home. It's really more of an issue for your offense than it is for the defense. But we definitely introduced a lot of that today, and we'll have to continue doing that all week long in practice.
Jeff, does it help that you faced Florida last year? You guys got a taste of just some of their players over there.
Yeah, I don't know if that helps. I would say there's familiarity with them, but this looks like a different team through 2 weeks than maybe where they were last year at that time. I think this group is, I don't know. I think they're 2 or 3 plays away from being 2-0 and being top 10 in the country. It's just maybe a different feel than it was last year at this point. But I think for us, that was almost a year ago. Early in the season last year. So they've changed and we've changed kind of since that point. And every year is kind of a new year. But yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, playing them and going through that a little bit last year, there'll be some lessons from maybe how we played and prepared last year and things we need to do different this year.
Jeff, any injury updates?
We do have some guys that are battling some injuries and working their way back. Hoping to get Matt Hill back this week. We'll see how he continues to progress. Antonio Greer, we're hoping to get him back. Joe, we're hoping to get him back. And we won't know till later in the week on Christian Williams. And I think that's about it for right now.
Jeff, after the Brigham Young game,
You said the only thing Saturday proved was that we're not ready to beat a top 25 team.
Yeah,
Florida's a top 25 team.
right.
Your players probably saw that statement, so how
Right.
do you deal with that this morning?
Well, I would say that, after we finished the BYU game, we, were not ready to beat a top 25 team. That was 2 weeks ago, and, you know, that's the exciting part about football is, each week is a new week and you get new opportunities to grow, and we'll find out after week 3, whether we play well enough to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're gonna have to play very, very well, to be able to you know, compete with these guys because they're super talented. I mean, it's 4 and 5 stars at every single position. There's not a weakness, position-wise, offense, defense, or special teams. So, we don't have to play perfect, but we're gonna have to play a lot better than we played. And so, whenever I kind of, you know, if you had a scale of kind of 0 to 10 of maybe, you know, what our best looks like as a 10, you know, I would say what I told the players today, I would say what I've seen first 2 games, we're at about a 5. So that's good and bad. The bad is we're not playing our best yet. The good is we have a whole other level that we can go to. And I think those guys know that as well. And, you know, that's our job as coaches and the players' job during the week in practice to improve those things. And all we can do is control what we can control. And I want to see us go out there and play the very best that we can play, whatever that looks like. And then at the end of the game, we'll look up and see how that matches up, you know, against them at the end of the day.
Jeff, obviously you know Billy well. When you look down at the film for the first 2 games, can you tell the stamp that he's put on this program compared to the one he faced last year?
Yeah, I would say, you know, it's tough because I don't want to sit here and try to say something that they weren't last year and talk about, you know, previous coaches or anything like that. But this is what I'd say. You can definitely see a team that is, they're playing extremely hard. They believe in what they're doing. And, you know, fundamentally, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a backside tight end that's not involved with the play. I mean, he's doing his job like the game depends on it. And, you know, Billy is a very, you know, he's a fundamental coach. He believes in fundamentals and techniques and playing hard. Then offensively, you definitely can see his stamp and the things that he likes to do and move guys around. I think that shows up a lot. But, you know, overall, they look very disciplined to me. They're playing extremely hard. You know, I'd say that the biggest thing that stands out right now, you know, I know and have known that they're explosive on offense. They've got a lot of weapons there. Quarterback's an incredible, phenomenal athlete and really can score at any moment. But really watching the video after not watching them until getting a chance to this week, stands out as their defense. I think has a chance to be elite. They're really, really good up front. I mean, you're looking at both Utah and Kentucky that had to leave extra guys to help that offensive line and chip those defensive ends. And when they didn't, the quarterback got hit. And so I think that stands out pretty quick. You know, I think they're going to be a really, really strong team as the year continues.
What are the ties between you and your family and Billy?
Yeah, so actually, I met Billy whenever I was in high school. He was one of the quarterbacks at Furman, and I went on my official visit to Furman. I was being recruited by Furman, and I met Billy there for the first time. And then, you know, whenever I finished at Clemson and went on and coached high school ball for a few years, and was coaching Presbyterian College for my first college season in 2007, you know, Billy was coaching at Clemson. He'd started there as a graduate assistant and moved up as an assistant coach. My dad was coaching at Clemson at the time, and Billy was the recruiting coordinator. And then whenever I came to Clemson in 2008 as a GA, and you know, Billy was the recruiting coordinator and tight ends coach. And then in the middle of that season is when Coach Sweeney got elevated to head coach, and Billy became the offensive coordinator. And I moved on full time to receivers coach. So I worked with him full time there for those 2 seasons. And you know, really, I learned a lot from Billy as a coach, but I probably learned even more about recruiting because he was the recruiting coordinator, and then I took over as a recruiting coordinator when he moved up to offensive coordinator. So whenever all the coaches went home, there were many, many late nights that he and I just would sit in the office and talk about, you know, things we can do in recruiting and strategy and all these things. And the other thing, I have a lot of respect for Billy because, you know, after Coach Sweeney's second year there at Clemson, you know, we lost to South Florida in the bowl game, And, you know, Coach Sweeney had to just kind of change some things up on the offensive staff and made a change. And I kind of watched Billy, you know, as he kind of went back and kind of built back his career and did it in an incredible way. Obviously working at Alabama and going on and working at Colorado State, and then at Arizona State, and then at Louisiana. You know, it's one thing as a coach maybe just to kind of have success and move your way all the way to the top, but you know, Billy, you know, did really well at Clemson, then had to restart and kind of you know, recreate his path. And I think that says a lot about, you know, his resilience, who he is as a person, and you know, I think he's going to be very successful at Florida because of he's very process oriented. He's kept every handout and every note from every meeting that he's been in, you know, since he was a GA at Clemson. I've seen his notebooks from Bama. I mean, he has every single thing, and he's meticulous. And so I'm not surprised to see that he's worked his way up, you know, to one of the best jobs in the country there at Florida, and I think he's going to do an outstanding job in his career.
Coach, is there a plan to go up Friday and get a walkthrough at the Swamp?
No, that's actually funny you say that. We used to do that back in the day. We really don't do that anymore. I don't know if other people do that anymore or not, but I guess we did that one time. We did that in Notre Dame 2 years ago. But no, we're going to do all of our work here, and then we'll stay in Ocala, and then we'll drive over from Ocala Saturday evening.
Jeff, what's the message to the team to kind of to give them confidence going into a game that, you know, obviously looks lopsided on
Yeah,
paper?
the big message is, it was the same message I gave them last week, just kind of on the other side of it, that the best team on paper doesn't win, it's the team that plays the best, right? And it just so happened that last week, there was about 4 or 5 examples of where that exact thing happened around the country. And so yeah, when you look at it on paper, we're not gonna win the game on paper for sure. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the team that plays the best for those 4 quarters. And so, you know, we need to do everything we can in practice right now so that we can play our absolute best. And whatever that looks like, you know, we'll look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game and see how that matches up. But you know, it's really kind of the big message that we want to have for our team as we move forward. It's easy to kind of get excited and starstruck over, you know, the stadium and who you're playing and all these type of things. But really, for us to have success, we got to kind of bring it down very narrow, zoom focus into controlling what we can control and how we do what we do and not, you know, who we play. So you know, I think our guys know it's a tall task, but they're excited about it. And you know, if everybody knew who was going to win every week, I don't think we would probably even be playing any of these games. Right? It'd be pretty boring college football season if the heavy favorites won every week. So at the end of the day, it's going to be the team that plays the best for those 4 quarters, and that's what we're focused on right now.
And seeing what Kentucky.
Do you think some of the slow starts that you guys have had over the last 2 weeks could maybe be solved by tweaking your script at the beginning of each half a little bit?
Yeah. Well, we didn't really get a chance to run our script. You know, last week we changed it up, and because Howard was super aggressive with their corners, you know, jumping hitches and those things, so we decided to try a double move, and they were in a different coverage and kind of got into an ugly play right there. And it took us 3 drives really we didn't get a lot going those first 3 drives, and then from the 4th drive until the last drive that the ones played in the 4th quarter, I think we scored 6 touchdowns on those 8 drives, so we really kind of got it rolling. But like you said, those first, you know, 3 drives, it was just too slow, and then same thing against BYU. Yeah, that's something we got to kind of figure out. You know, how to go out. We can't afford to have a poor first quarter in any game, but especially in a game like that this week. You know, we kind of tweaked a few things in our practice schedule. We're doing a little bit more good on good at the very beginning of practice instead of kind of easing into it through special teams and individual and all that. So maybe that intensity at the beginning of practice can translate over to the game.
Sounds like.
How important was it?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
How important was it for this team's confidence, not only to beat Howard, but the way you beat them? I mean, the 4th quarter was real strong.
Yeah.
I mean, with the rest of the season coming up.
Yeah. No, I think it was really important. I think, again, you learn a lot about your team, and you may think you know something about your team based off of, you know, off season, and you evaluate everything you can, but at the end of the day, it's all about the games, right? You get in these games, and all of a sudden it's 14-7. And when we played the game out in our mind, we didn't have it 14-7 at halftime. So all of a sudden, this is another one of those moments to kind of find out, okay, how are we going to respond? Are we going to say, oh, here we go again, or are we going to take some action, lock in on doing our job, put our head down, and not worry about the result to the very end? And I felt like our guys did that. So that was a positive to see, how they responded in that situation. I mean, and again, it was kind of that day in college football where there was a lot of that going on, and there's probably a lot of those other teams that were in a similar situation at halftime, and they were not able to kind of get over that hump. And so, that's a positive, and we want to build off of that. Yes, it made us feel a lot better maybe about the scope of the game. But as we kind of come back and watch the video, is hey, we don't need to let it get till that point. And there's going to be less room for error this week, obviously, than there was, last week. And so, trying to clean those up. Yeah, there's no doubt. The way we were able to finish in the second half, I think, was able to give our guys some confidence. And then the other thing is, we played with, there was a lot of guys that were out, especially defensively, there last week. And then as the game went on, we put in a lot more backups. And, so it was good with a very difficult non-conference schedule. There's not a whole lot of opportunities for those 2s and 3s to get real game reps. And so that was an opportunity. Because we were able to take over in the third quarter and get the game to where it was, it allowed us an opportunity to get a lot of those younger guys some reps, where maybe that's going to be a little bit more difficult here these next 2 weeks before we start conference play.
Sounds like with the way you're describing Florida's defense, there's a premium on your offensive line playing well. We know how experienced they are. How well have they played so far, and
Yeah.
What do you look for this week for them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge challenge. I mean, I think when you look at Utah and Kentucky's offensive line, I think both of them have really good offensive lines, and there's some bad pictures in there just because I think their nose guard, number 21, I believe, is over 400 pounds, and he just runs that center straight back. And so it's going to be some big challenges. I think number one, we as coaches, have to have a really good game plan and what we're asking our guys to do. We've got to kind of mix up some of our blocking schemes and not be as maybe predictable, where those guys can kind of get a running start and know what we're doing. So it's a little bit of us coming up with some schemes that'll help our guys and really use the strength and knowledge that our group has. I believe in our offensive line. They've got really good chemistry. They work well together. There's not a lot of bust and missed assignments. Usually that group's on the same page. But that's going to be a big task. I mean, this game, there's plenty of great athletes on both sides of the sideline in this game, but it's really going to be a big night for our offensive line against their D-line and our defensive line versus our offensive line.
Jeff, you saw what Anthony Richardson was able to do against Utah, with running the football with his legs. Kentucky was able to shut him down, and that making him kind of a one-dimensional athlete. Is that kind of the key for you guys going in? Is not to get hit with those big runs?
Yeah, I think I would say Florida's offense has shown already this year, and with those guys that have played in the past, even though Anthony's just maybe starting for the first time, we saw him up close and personal last year in our game, and they're very explosive on offense. I think their wideouts are big and can really run and stretch the field. They've got some really good tight ends that are matchup problems. They've got 3 or 4 running backs. I saw Etienne, Travis Etienne's brother, and he looks just like Travis did at Clemson, except I don't know that Travis looked like that as a true freshman. Watching him play this past week, I mean, he's already a big time playmaker for them. But and then obviously the quarterback. I mean, it's difficult when you're playing a dual threat guy that can throw it. He has an incredibly strong arm, and he's got wideouts that can stretch the field. But also, if it's not there, you've seen it in a couple of those games. He takes off and runs, and 50-yard touchdown just like that. So I think for us, it comes down to playing the call, doing your job, doing your responsibility. And then a big thing this week is we're going to have to be able to wrap up with those backs, those wideouts, those tight ends, and then the quarterback. I mean, he's a big, strong guy, and we're going to have to tackle better and wrap up. That's going to be a big key for us to have success for our offense.
Jeff, you said a couple minutes ago you learned a lot about recruiting from building those times together. Any lessons that you learned from that you still kind of carry with you? Any pointers?
Yeah. I mean, there's some little things. Number one, big picture thing is that you got to be willing to put in the work. You know, a lot of times some coaches may look at recruiting and say, oh, it's the end of my day, let me just make a call on the way home. And I mean, if you're not recruiting every day and, you know, working extremely hard to get to know everybody, you know, around that recruit, the family, all these people, developing close relationships. So I think number one, he just spent a lot of time on it, and he was able to develop relationships very quickly. And then, you know, also he believed in written notes, where a lot of people it's just text messages or sending a graphic. I mean, he's still from that point, and I've seen him all the way through, you know, believes in handwritten notes. One of the funny stories is I was recruiting, I'm not going to name the player, but I was recruiting a top player down in Florida. This has probably been, I don't know, over 5 years ago. And he was a senior, and I had a home visit with him, and you know, I had written down a bunch of things and just kind of some points about why Clemson. And then about an hour, I felt really good about it. I left, I felt really good about it. And about an hour and a half later, I got a text message from Billy, and he was at that kid's house, and he was holding up my notes. And Billy's like, pretty good, I like this. And a lot of things that I learned from Billy along the way. So just kind of funny how it kind of becomes a small world, right? You kind of see these guys, but I mean, Billy's just a hard worker, very detail-oriented, very process-oriented. He's not in, you know, I remember one time, my first year coaching wideouts, again, he was the coordinator, and I was out there yelling at a wideout because he dropped the ball, you know, just yelling because I was mad. And Billy kind of called me over there and said, hey, don't just yell because you're mad. Like, tell him what he needs to do. Like, what does he need to put his thumbs together and eyes to the ball? Like, give him specific instruction on what he needs to improve. And I mean, that just for me as a young coach, like that really, you know, like, yeah, that makes sense. Don't just get out here and just yell to yell. Like, let's give, and that's something I've carried ever since then, right? Detailed instruction. And obviously there's a time and intensity in your voice and all that comes with it, but just being very detailed in your teaching. And then also I learned from him in recruiting, you know, you'd be going out, and we had our recruiting areas, and you'd be in your area all day, and you know, he'd call me later that day and say, how'd it go today? And I said, oh, good, I saw 12, I went to 12 schools and all that. I was like, that's good, but how many like recruits did you see? Like, how many real guys did you see? This isn't just about tagging the schools. And we gotta like make sure that, you know, we're hitting and we're seeing real guys every day and everything that we're doing. So there was just a lot of those kind of, I don't know, he was a young guy that had maybe a 3 or 4 year head start than me getting into college. And I saw how well respected he was. Obviously, he's very well respected. That when Coach Sweeney became the head coach interim, he moved him up. Billy was in his, you know, mid-20s at that point, so he was very well respected on that staff as a position coach and a recruiter. And so, just me being a young coach, he was a guy that I really, you know, looked up to, listened to. And then even after he left Clemson, you know, we stayed in touch for many years. I've talked to him, you know, my first 2 years here when he was at Louisiana, and you know, there's a lot of calls there, just kind of asking him, even this summer, dealing with some of the things in recruiting and NIL and all these things going on. I called him several times this summer just to kind of get his opinion on some things. So he's definitely a resource and you know, more than just a friend off the field, but definitely a resource in the profession.
I don't think you've been involved in the game of the swamp since you were like a kid, right? When your dad.
Yeah.
Do you have swamp memories? I know there was one particular game that might rank up there. Like
man, these are a long time ago. So I have memories when my dad was coaching at Florida State, obviously, and I was on the sidelines. And then I remember several of the games when my dad was coaching at South Carolina, and I was on the sidelines. But this will be my first. There's not many places in the Southeast that during my 12 years at Clemson that I didn't get a chance to go and coach in that venue. And if I sat here and thought about it real quick, I would really say as a position coach, coordinator, on the field coach, this may be the only place in the Southeast that I haven't had a chance to coach. But you know, I got a lot of family that's from Florida that grew up and went to school at Florida, and Florida fans and all those things. So I know the passion. And I mean, I was really young. There were some really good games between Florida State and Florida. I don't think we competed very well. A couple of the years my dad took South Carolina down to Gainesville, but the Florida State, Florida game. I remember just that environment and how loud it is. And, again, it's one of the great, college venues and, what makes college football so special.
Were you on the sideline for the work done pass?
Yes, yeah.
When it went silent?
Right, yeah, I was there. I was 12.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to remember last year right now, but yeah, no, I do. I remember, leaving there, with good feelings and bad feelings, for sure.
Coach, how important is the kicking game gonna be, especially punting, making Florida go to Lincoln?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, having a chance to go out and compete against a talented team like this, we've got to play well in all three phases. And, special teams is an area where we've done some things really well and some things we still got to improve on. I think punting is an area where we can get better. I mean, you don't want to give this team any short fields. We need to definitely be able to win some field position battles there. And then we're going to have to cover well on kickoff, and we're going to have to, look for some big plays on kickoff return, and then obviously on field goal and field goal block, very important. So, I mean, our message for our guys is, we need to play our absolute best in all three phases when you're playing a talented team like this. All right, thank y'all.
Thanks,
I appreciate it.